This story might be a little different from what you're used to reading here. Sure, there are plenty of tales about people getting betrayed, caught off guard by someone they thought they could trust. But my story? Well, it's not exactly like that. I wasn't just the guy who got hurt. In the end, I played a part in things falling apart too. But before you jump to conclusions and think I'm just another jerk, let me explain. I didn't get here on my own. I was pushed into making the choices I did. It wasn't entirely my fault. But let's rewind a bit. We need to start from somewhere, right? A little background info will help before I get into all the chaos. First off, I'm just an average guy. I'm not some genius or a movie hero. I'm just a regular guy, working a normal job, doing what I can to get by and keep things balanced. I've never been the type to go looking for drama. I'm steady, predictable even. That's just who I am, always has been. My name doesn't matter, but my wife? Melanie? She's a different story. Melanie was the kind of woman who stood out. She had a presence, you know? Like when she walked into a room, everyone would notice her. It wasn't that she was unbelievably stunning, though she was definitely beautiful. It was more about the way she carried herself. Confident, sharp, quick on her feet in conversations. She had this energy that made people want to be around her. Honestly, when we first met, I was amazed at how easy things seemed for her. People just gravitated toward her. And why wouldn't they? She was funny, charming, and had this laugh that was so contagious, it could lift your spirits even on your worst days. And her sense of humor? It was something else entirely. She could throw out a joke, tear you down with one line, and somehow, you'd still end up laughing. It was like a trick. Everyone loved her for it. Her friends, our family, even my own friends. And I'll admit, at the start, I did too. But over time, that humor? It started to get old. It's tough to laugh when you're the one being made fun of all the time, you know? She was the funny one in the relationship. Me? Not so much. I was the serious one, the one who kept everything in check, making sure we didn't go off track. For a while, that balance worked. She brought the spark, and I kept things from going up in flames. But her humor? Well, that humor came back to bite me in a way I never saw coming. It played a cruel, twisted joke on me. So cruel, so messed up, that I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't lived through it. You probably won't believe it either. Not until you hear how it all went down. It was just a normal evening. Nothing out of the ordinary. I came home from work, tired as usual. The grind was starting to wear me down. But hey, that's life, right? You work, you come home, you eat, you sleep, and then repeat. But that night, when I walked through the door, the house felt different. Warm, inviting. Dinner was already on the table. Something Italian, I think. She knew I liked pasta, so she would often make it on nights like this when she was in a good mood. The candles were lit, Melanie had a thing for creating a nice atmosphere, and there she was, smiling like everything was fine, like nothing was wrong at all. We sat down to eat. We talked, just like we always did. Nothing out of the ordinary. I asked her about her day, she asked me about mine. She laughed at something stupid I said, her laugh, that damn laugh. I remember thinking everything was fine. I wasn't really paying attention to her mood, too busy eating and trying to shake off the stress from the day. But as the conversation went on, something shifted. It was small at first, just a little change in the way she sat, her voice softening a bit. I noticed her leaning back in her chair, her eyes narrowing slightly. Then she hit me with it, out of nowhere. She started off casual, like we were talking about the weather. I've been feeling a little tired of us lately. I looked up from my plate, confused, thinking maybe I hadn't heard her right. Tired. I repeated, my fork frozen in midair. What do you mean, tired? She sighed, like this was the most ordinary conversation in the world. I don't know. It's just, things have been feeling a bit stale. Like we're stuck, you know? I didn't know. I was completely blindsided. We weren't fighting. We weren't in any kind of serious trouble, at least not that I could see. We had our routines, sure, but I thought we were solid. Married for 7 years, you'd think by now we'd have this figured out. But apparently, I was wrong. So wrong. And then, she dropped the real bomb. So, I slept with someone, she said, her voice flat, like it was nothing. Like she was telling me she bought a new pair of shoes or changed her hair color. It made me feel better. But don't worry, she said, I'm not gonna do it again. I couldn't process it. My brain just stopped. Everything went quiet inside my head. The words hung in the air like a sick joke that hadn't landed yet. Did she just say that? Did she just tell me she cheated on me over dinner? Casually, like it was nothing. My mouth went dry. My grip on the fork tightened, and I could feel the metal bending under the pressure, but I didn't care. I just stared at her, looking for any hint that she was joking, that this was just one of her silly pranks. But there was nothing in her eyes, just cold indifference. Then, as if she hadn't just shattered my world, she stood up, walked over to me, and kissed me on the lips. A quick, emotionless kiss. "Good night," she said softly, and without another word, she turned and walked to the bedroom, leaving me sitting there, frozen in place. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. I looked down at my hands, realizing I had bent the fork in half without even noticing. My chest was tight, and all I could feel was anger, building up inside me, filling every inch of my body. But instead of going after her, instead of demanding answers, I stayed there, fist clenched, my mind racing with one thought: revenge. She thought she could just drop that bomb, kiss me, and walk away like nothing happened? Like I wasn't supposed to do anything? Oh, I was going to react, all right. I was going to make her regret ever saying a word. But how the hell was I supposed to know this was all just a joke? How was I supposed to understand that her twisted sense of humor had taken things this far? As soon as she kissed me and walked off to the bedroom like nothing had changed, I felt this wave of rage burn through me. I couldn't sit there and let it fester, not with my mind spiraling like it was. Without thinking it through, I grabbed my jacket, threw it on, and walked straight out of the house. I needed to get out of there. I needed air, space, anything to clear my head, but more than that, I needed someone to talk to. My first instinct was to call my best friend, the guy I usually turned to when things went south. But as I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb stopped on another name, my wife's friend. Let's call her Margaret. Now, Margaret wasn't just some random friend of Melanie's. I had known her longer than I had known my wife. We ran in the same circles before Melanie and I even started dating. And if I'm being honest, there had always been something between Margaret and me. Nothing serious, but I knew she liked me back then, before I even got with Melanie. It was one of those things where the timing was never right. But I had a feeling her feelings hadn't really gone away. So, without thinking it through, I called her. She picked up after a couple of rings, sounding surprised, but not in a bad way. "Hey, what's up?" she asked casually, like we hadn't talked in months. "Can you meet me?" I blurted out. "At the bar near your place?" I need to talk," I said, feeling a little desperate. There was a brief pause, but she didn't press me for details. "Sure. I'll be there in 10, she replied. That was it. No questions about why I needed to talk or what was going on. She just agreed, like she knew something was off. I got in my car and headed to the bar, my mind still spinning from everything that had just happened back home. When I arrived, I spotted her immediately. Margaret was already sitting at a booth, sipping a drink. She looked up as I walked in, her eyebrows raising slightly in surprise. "Where's Melanie?" she asked as I sat down, but I avoided answering her at first. "She's not coming," I said flatly. That got her attention. She leaned in slightly, her expression shifting from casual to concerned. "What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." We ordered a couple of drinks, and as the alcohol started to kick in, I found myself opening up. I told her everything, what Melanie had said, how she dropped the bomb about cheating like it was no big deal, and how she acted like everything was normal. At first, Margaret didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, the shock and disbelief. But the more she looked at me, the more she realized I wasn't lying. I saw the realization dawn on her. We kept drinking, and with each round, the conversation grew heavier. The alcohol started dulling the sharp edge of my anger, but it was still simmering beneath the surface. By the time the bartender called last call, we were both pretty drunk. Margaret, out of nowhere, leaned in closer and said, "I have another bottle of wine back at my place if you want to keep this going." I didn't hesitate. I nodded, and we left the bar together. Her apartment was just a short walk away. We stumbled in, laughing about something I can't even remember now. But the moment we opened that bottle of wine, I knew exactly where the night was heading. There was a certain look in her eyes, an intensity, and I wasn't going to stop it. I didn't want to. It didn't take long. After a few glasses, things started to escalate. 1 minute, we were talking, and the next, we were on her couch, hands everywhere, lips locked. And in that moment, I did something I hadn't planned on at all. I pulled out my phone and started filming. Not the whole thing, just little snippets here and there. Margaret noticed, of course, and at first, she wasn't having it. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice a little slurred but still sharp. She pushed my hand away. "It's just for me," I said quickly, trying to reassure her. "No one else will ever see it, I promise. It'll be fine." She hesitated for a moment, but then finally caved. Alcohol, desire, and years of unresolved tension. Guess that's how it happens sometimes. So, I kept the camera rolling for a while, capturing just enough to satisfy whatever messed up part of me thought it was a good idea. After everything, when it was done, I sat up and told her I needed to leave. She looked at me, a bit disappointed. "You're leaving?" she asked, the hurt creeping into her voice. "Yeah, I should," I said, already feeling the weight of what I'd just done. "It's late," she said, and I could tell she wanted me to stay. But I wasn't about to spend the night there. This wasn't going to be a regular thing, and I sure as hell wasn't going to make my life even more complicated by sticking around. So I left. I called a taxi, and as I sat in the back seat, my head still spinning from the booze and everything else, I felt a weird mix of satisfaction and guilt. I'd done it. I'd taken my revenge. But did it make me feel better? Not really. If anything, I just felt empty. It was like the night had filled a temporary gap, but it wasn't going to fix anything. When I got home, it was late. The house was dark, and Melanie was probably in bed, completely unaware of what had just happened. I stood in the hallway for a minute, trying to process everything. Then, without saying a word, I made my way to the couch and crashed there for the night. The next morning, the tension was already thick in the air. You know that heavy, suffocating silence, the one that just screams that something's wrong? That was it. I tried to brush it off as I dragged myself into the kitchen, half expecting Melanie to act like everything was fine, like last night had never happened. But nope. She was sitting at the table, her eyes narrowed and her lips tight as she scrolled through her phone. She didn't even look up when I walked in, just sipped her coffee, but I could feel she was pissed. Not the kind of rage that explodes, but that simmering, quiet anger where you know she's just waiting to go off. I sat down across from her, pretending not to notice, but I could feel her eyes on me, drilling into the back of my head. We ate in silence for a few minutes before she finally spoke, her voice thick with irritation. "So," she started, dragging the word out, "where the hell were you last night? You came home so damn late, and you didn't even come to bed." I could feel her eyes on me, waiting for an explanation, but I wasn't in the mood for her interrogation. Still, I knew I had to answer, but this time, I wasn't going to lie. She had started this mess, after all. I took a deep breath, trying to sound as calm as possible. "I was out," I said flatly, not giving her anything more to work with just yet. I needed some space to think. Her eyes narrowed, and she set her phone down, focusing on me entirely. "Think about what?" she asked, her voice tight. "Because, from where I'm sitting, it looks like you were up to something." I glanced at her, a slight smirk pulling at the corner of my mouth. "Yeah, I was thinking. About us. About how I'm a little tired of our relationship, too." That caught her off guard. She blinked a few times, her brow furrowing in confusion. "Wait, what? You're tired? Since when?" I shrugged, keeping my tone casual, like it wasn't a big deal, even though we both knew it was. "For a while, I guess. And last night." I paused, letting the tension settle between us. "I did something about it." Her expression didn't change at first. She looked confused, almost like she thought I was messing with her. Then, she leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and smirked like she thought she had caught me in a lie. "Oh really? You did something about it? What did you do, huh? Cheat on me?" I stared right at her, not breaking eye contact. "Yeah, I did." The smirk stayed on her face, but her eyes narrowed, searching mine, trying to figure out if I was serious. "Oh, come on," she laughed, short and disbelieving. "You're joking. What is this, your way of getting back at me for what I said last night?" I didn't look away. "I'm not joking, Melanie. I cheated on you." Her smile faltered, but only for a second. "Sure you did." "With who? The waitress at the bar? Some random girl from work?" "Who?" she asked, still trying to keep her cool. I took a breath, knowing this was about to hit her harder than anything. "No, not some random girl. It was with Margaret." Her smile disappeared completely, replaced by a look of pure disbelief. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open, unable to process what I had just said. "Wait, what? Margaret? My Margaret? Are you serious right now?" I didn't flinch. "Yeah, I slept with her last night." She blinked again, then burst out laughing, though this time, it wasn't from humor. It was out of sheer nerves. "Oh my God, you're kidding. You have to be. Margaret? That's your big lie? What kind of joke is this?" I didn't say anything. I just calmly reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened the video. I pressed play and held it up for her to see. She looked at the screen, still smiling, still thinking this was some elaborate prank. But as the video started and Margaret's face appeared, her smile began to waver. Then the sound kicked in, our voices, the unmistakable noise of what we had done, and her expression changed completely. Her face went pale. Her eyes widened in shock. Her hand flew up to her mouth, and before I could react, she smacked the phone out of my hand with enough force to send it clattering across the table. "You bastard," she screamed, her voice cracking as she stood up so fast that her chair almost tipped over. "You fucking idiot. You slept with Margaret? You're out of your goddamn mind." I stood up, my own anger rising to match hers. "Oh, so now I'm the asshole? What about you, huh? You cheated on me first. You don't get to play the victim here." Her eyes were wild, her breathing heavy. "I didn't cheat on you, you moron. It was a fucking joke." I froze. Her words echoed in my head, but at first, I couldn't make sense of them. "A joke? What are you talking about?" I asked, feeling confused. She threw her hands up in frustration, pacing around the kitchen like she was about to snap. "I said it to mess with you," she snapped. "I was kidding, you idiot. I didn't sleep with anyone. I was going to tell you after you cooled down, but you stormed out of the house like a maniac before I could explain." The room started spinning. My brain couldn't catch up to what she was saying. "A joke? You were joking?" I asked, almost unable to believe it. "Yes," she screamed, tears welling up in her eyes. "I was fucking joking. I never cheated on you. But you? You just went and slept with Margaret and filmed it? How the hell do you expect me to react to that?" I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. All the anger and justification I had built up inside myself fell apart in an instant. I stood there, my mouth dry, my heart pounding, realizing just how badly I had screwed up. "Melanie," I said softly, trying to reach for her. "I didn't know." "I don't want to hear it." She cut me off, her voice cracking. "You've done enough." Tears streamed down her face now, and she looked more broken than I had ever seen her. "You ruined everything, you asshole. You slept with my best friend. How am I supposed to forgive that?" I had no words. There was nothing I could say to fix it. "I didn't know." I repeated weakly, but the words felt empty, useless. She shook her head, backing away from me. Just go. I don't want to see you right now." With that, she turned and stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door so hard that the walls shook. I heard the lock click, followed by the sound of her sobbing. I stood there, frozen in the middle of the kitchen, feeling like my world had just collapsed. I wanted to fix it, to apologize, but what could I do? I had messed up. Badly. And now, there was no going back. After Melanie locked herself in the bedroom, I knew I couldn't just sit around waiting for things to fix themselves. The guilt was eating me alive. I couldn't stop thinking about the hurt and shock on her face. But at the same time, I was still angry. Angry that she'd made that stupid joke in the first place, that she had pushed me to this point. So, I grabbed my jacket and went straight to Margaret's place. I had to tell her everything. When I got there, Margaret opened the door, her face lighting up when she saw me, at least for a second. I didn't waste any time with small talk. I told her everything, from Melanie's confession about the joke to the moment I showed her the video. As I spoke, I saw Margaret's face shift from confusion to fury. "You're an asshole," she spat, crossing her arms, her expression hardening. "You set me up. You didn't tell me this was all part of some sick revenge scheme," she added, eyes narrowing. "What the hell are you talking about?" I shot back, my own frustration bubbling up. "You agreed to it, remember? You knew exactly what we were doing." "Yeah, I agreed because I thought it was just between us," Margaret yelled, pacing around her living room, her hands flying up in the air. "I didn't know you were using me to get back at Melanie. Do you realize what you've done? I've lost my best friend because of you." I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. "It's not just my fault, Margaret. You were there. You knew what you were doing. You're just as guilty." She stopped in her tracks, glaring at me. "You really are a piece of work, you know that? I've loved you since university, and this is how you repay me? By screwing up my life?" The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't known she still had feelings for me, not like that. For a moment, all the anger between us faded, replaced by a heavy silence. We both just sat down on our couch, staring at the floor, trying to make sense of everything. After a few minutes, Margaret sighed and pulled out her phone. "I'm going to try calling Melanie." Maybe I can explain, make her understand. I don't know, something. She dialed Melanie's number, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried again, then again, but no luck. Melanie wasn't picking up, and at this point, I didn't know if she ever would. Desperation began to creep in. I felt like I was sinking, and no matter what I did, I couldn't pull myself out. Eventually, I left Margaret's place and went back home, hoping to try again with Melanie to apologize, to fix this mess somehow. But when I walked through the door, the first thing she said to me was, "I already called a lawyer." She didn't even look at me, her voice cold and detached. "I'm filing for divorce." My stomach dropped. It was like the ground beneath me had crumbled, and I was free falling with no end in sight. "Melanie, please," I started, but she didn't want to hear it. "There's nothing more to say," she cut me off, her back turned as she folded laundry like it was just another day. "You made your choice. I'm making mine." I stood there for a moment, trying to think of what to say, but there was nothing. I felt like complete shit. I had lost her. There was no going back from this. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I went back to Margaret's place. I knocked on her door, and when she opened it, I asked if I could stay with her for a while. She hesitated, her eyes scanning my face, full of frustration and doubt. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said at first, crossing her arms. I couldn't blame her. I had dragged her into this mess too. She had her own things to deal with now. But as I turned to leave, feeling defeated, she called me back. "Wait," she said, softer this time. "All right, fine. You can stay. But just for a bit. This whole thing, it's a lot." So, I stayed with Margaret. The divorce process dragged on for about a month, and during that time, our entire social circle knew about what had happened. Melanie made sure of it. She told everyone, every little detail, and our friends all picked sides. Some stayed neutral, but most of them sided with her. I couldn't blame them. During that time, Margaret and I started spending more time together. What had started as a mistake, something fueled by anger and bad decisions, slowly turned into something else. We tried to date, to make sense of this new situation, but the more we tried, the more we realized something wasn't right. There was this huge gap between us, like we were both too broken, too out of place to make anything work. She still had feelings for me, sure, but now those feelings were tainted by everything that had happened. I felt it too. We tried to act like things were normal, but nothing was. Every time I looked at her, I couldn't shake the guilt of what we'd done. Every time she smiled, it was forced, like she was trying to convince herself this was okay. But deep down, we both knew it wasn't. I was stuck in this limbo, caught between the wreckage of my marriage and this new, fragile thing with Margaret that didn't feel real. And as the days passed, it became clearer that no matter how hard we tried to move on, neither of us could escape the mess we had created. We were out of place, both of us, and I had no idea where to go from there. It's been a while since everything went down, and I figured I owe you all an update. After all the chaos with Melanie, the divorce, and that whole mess with Margaret, I've had some time to reflect. I've grown up a lot, more than I ever thought I would, honestly. Margaret and I, well, we tried to make it work for a while. We had a history, sure, and for a moment, it felt like maybe we could turn something messy into something meaningful. But the reality was, it just wasn't right. We grew up together in more ways than one, and for a time, we were each other's crutch during a period when everything was falling apart. But you know what really killed it? Our so-called friends. The judgment from everyone around us was relentless. People loved to talk, point fingers, like they were somehow better than us, like they had any room to judge. They whispered behind our backs, made snide comments, and treated us like some scandal they could gossip about at every opportunity. It was exhausting, and eventually, it just became too much. One night, after another awkward encounter with one of her friends, Margaret and I sat down, and we both knew. We knew it wasn't going to work, not with all the baggage, not with everyone's opinions hanging over us like a dark cloud. So, we made the decision to end it. It wasn't a huge fight or a dramatic breakup. We just let it go. For both of our sakes. Now, I'm in a different place, literally and figuratively. I've decided to move to another city. I'm packing up my things and getting ready to leave this town and all the memories behind. It's strange, but it feels like the right move. Like I need to get away from the mess, from the people who won't let me forget what happened, and just start fresh. I want to start my life from scratch. No more judgment, no more baggage from the past hanging over me. It's scary as hell, I won't lie. But there's something about a fresh start that gives me hope. Maybe this time, I can figure out who I really am, without all the mistakes and bad decisions following me around. I'm not saying it'll be easy. Nothing ever is. But it's a step forward, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm ready for it. Here's to new beginnings. Well, here I am, already settled into a new city. It's strange how quickly things can change when you really decide to leave the past behind. I found a job pretty quickly, too. I'm working in an office now, doing something totally different from what I used to. It's nothing fancy, just basic admin work with a little bit of project management on the side. It's a steady gig, and honestly, after everything I've been through, the normalcy is kind of a relief. I clock in, do my job, and clock out. No drama, no stress. Just the daily grind, and for now, that's enough. But, of course, life always finds a way to throw something unexpected at you. There's this girl at work. Let's call her Angela. She's the kind of woman who lights up a room when she walks in, but not in an over-the-top way. There's just something about her. She has this quiet confidence, you know? And she's smart as hell, doesn't take crap from anyone. I catch myself looking her way more than I should, and I think she's noticed, but I haven't said anything. How could I? I'm still carrying all this baggage from my past. The divorce, the fallout with Margaret, it's all still there, lingering in the back of my mind. I can't help but feel guilty, like I don't deserve to try again. Part of me feels like I need to make peace with everything that happened before I can even think about moving forward with someone else. So here I am, stuck in this weird limbo. I really like Angela, but I don't know how to tell her. I keep thinking, what if I mess it up again? What if I'm still too broken to make this work? I guess that's why I'm asking you all, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you take the risk, or wait it out until you're sure the past won't screw things up? Anyway, I just wanted to check in and thank you for sticking with me through all of this. Your support has meant a lot, more than I can say. I'm still figuring things out, but it feels good to know there are people out there who've got my back. Here's hoping I can make something good out of all this. I figured it was time for another update, and this one's a bit different from the last. I'm in a relationship with that girl from work, Angela. It's been going well, better than I expected, honestly. I took my time, though. I didn't rush into anything because I wanted to make sure I was ready. I've been working with a psychologist for a while now, really putting in the effort to work through the mess of emotions and heartache after everything that went down with Melanie and Margaret. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. The thing is, I realized I can't keep punishing myself for the past. Yeah, I made some serious mistakes, and yeah, it's taken a lot to come to terms with them. But I'm starting to feel like I'm finally moving forward, like I deserve to try again. And Angela? She's been patient, understanding, and just good. She knows about my past, and while I was nervous to tell her at first, she didn't judge me for it. That's rare. One thing that hasn't changed, though, I never did develop a sense of humor. Maybe that's just not in the cards for me, but I've learned to live with it. We laugh about it sometimes, especially since Angela's got that lightness to her that I admire. Maybe that's enough for both of us. Anyway, I just wanted to let you all know how things are going. I'm in a better place now, and it feels good to finally say that. Thanks for sticking with me through everything. Wishing you all the best, and good luck wherever life takes you.